Le monde, c'est nous.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African media. Thank you. Thank you, African media. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.
Cameroon is protesting criticism from French President Emmanuel Macron over how the Central African state is handling the conflict in its English-speaking regions. On Monday, over 100 youth rallied at the French embassy demanding Macron apologize and leave Cameroon alone. Tuesday, a group of youths marched in the north supporting President Biya. Some of the protesters, mainly young people, carried flags of Cameroon, while others held up banners with messages opposing Macron. Social media footage of the French president telling a Cameroonian activist that he's pressured Biya into releasing a jailed opposition leader, that's Maurice Kamto, and ending human rights abuses have gone viral. French President Emmanuel Macron was filmed after about 22 people were killed in the English-speaking northwest of Cameroon by men in military uniform. Mr. Macron said in the video that he would call President Paul Biya and put maximum pressure so that the situation ends. The protesters say the government didn't pay for nor organize their demonstration, but videos and images circulating on social media shows them eating after the protest and writing down their names on a paper, probably or not for a reward, according to eyewitnesses. A majority of Cameroonians on social media, however, are surprised that protests can go on in Cameroon uninterrupted. They equally question why the youth never came out to protest against the killings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. So, what do you think about the anti-Macron protests in Cameroon? And what are your thoughts about President Macron's utterance? Hello to you, fellow Africans and fellow viewers joining us from all over the world. It's Views on the Continent, your weekly program on African media, which is interactive and informative. Today we are discussing Cameroon. Youths have come out in 3 different regions of the country, in the central region, in Yaoundé, and in the littoral. And as of today, we've heard about youths coming out in their numbers in the northern region of the country, and they carry banners and placards saying the French government should leave Cameroon alone. And they are talking especially about the French President Macron after his utterances or revelations about Cameroon and the President Paul Biya to a Cameroonian activist. And the government of Cameroon has released already about 2 communiques on the issue that we're going to be discussing throughout the program today. We have a guest in the studio, but then before we introduce him, I would like us to take a listen to this report, which was done by Clarice Ridoven. She has been following the matter in Cameroon, and she did this report for us. Take a listen.
Hundreds of Cameroonian youths of all walks of life have shown their discontentment towards the country's former colonial power, France, for what they called malicious revelations made by French President Emmanuel Macron that stand to damage the country's human rights record. These years on Monday, February 23rd, invaded the French embassy in Yaoundé, protesting against the undiplomatic outing of French President Macron and Cameroon, with banners that carried powerful messages like France, why damage my future by financing terrorism in my country? The youth marched outside the French embassy situated in Olizwa in Cameroon's political capital Yaoundé. Apparently, President Macron let the cat out of the box on Saturday after being confronted by an activist who sought his opinion regarding the recent killings that took place in Gabor in the northwest region of Cameroon. Some 22 civilians, including women and children, were reportedly killed this month. This inhumane act was likened to the Rwandan genocide and highly condemned by thousands. According to Macron, the human rights situation in Cameroon is intolerable, promising to discuss with President Paul Biya in the coming weeks to put an end to the flare-up in the predominantly English-speaking regions of the country. As per Macron, it was after he denied President Biya entry to Lyon that the president called for the release of Maurice Kamto and other political prisoners. However, the protesting youths described Macron's utterances as undiplomatic, unacceptable and unfair. In the meantime, Cameroon's government spokesperson, René Emmanuel Sadi, in a press conference has condemned both the activists and President Macron for what he called gross exaggeration and misleading words on the human rights situation. The past weeks, however, have been tumultuous in Cameroon after some civilians, including children and women, were killed in cold blood in the northwest region of Cameroon. There is, however, hope for the crisis to be arrested as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Clarice Wiedeven, for that report. And just to add to what Clarice has said, the Secretary General at the Presidency, Ferdinand Ngo, has already reacted to this revelation by the French President Macron about President Paul Biya and Cameroon, and he's revealed, or he has sent out a communique, and what we are going to read here is: Biya is fully committed to accomplish the heavy and exalting mission bestowed on him by the Almighty God and the sovereign people of Cameroon, and does not need any external force to put pressure on him. Now, introducing our guest, Mr. Ambe Valentine. Thank you so much, sir, for always making time out of your busy schedule to be here with us in the studio.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, millions of televiewers of our free media across the nations of the world. We are once more excited again to be on this platform to talk about Africa, and we cannot talk about Africa exempting Cameroon because we are Cameroonians. What is happening in our country is a major concern to us, and we are here to give our own view as far as the subject matter is concerned. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, thank you. Now let's just dive straight into it. Some call it a diplomatic blunder. How do you look at this exchange that President Emmanuel Macron had with a Cameroonian activist as he was conducting a state duty in his country on Saturday?
I do not consider it a state blunder, because at the level where Macron is a president, understands diplomacy and is matured enough to handle international affairs. Secondly, a president cannot be taken unaware, because Macron is fully aware from the statement he made. He said, "Je suis totalement au courant," which means in English, I am fully aware of what is happening. So I don't think he was taken by surprise. He had a prior knowledge of what is happening. So if they say he was taken by surprise, amazing, because he has been following detailing exactly what is happening based on what the Calibro, the anti-Sadina leader, confronted him and the questions he put before Macron. Macron responded as per se, considering the situation going on in the country. There was no mix-up in it. But I want to begin by saying that Cameroon is a nation with wonders of the age. Wonders of the age means things we have not yet seen on earth we are going to see in Cameroon. I want to give a brief analysis, even though I might not have spent the entire number of my years in this country. I think I've spent a greater part of my years in this country. The things that sometimes we rise up to revolt or to protest, they sometimes amaze me, because I've been in this country when the franc CFA was devalued. We expected people to rise up and protest. Nobody protested. And when fuel dropped in the international market and it was maintained in Cameroon, We expect Cameroonians to protest, and nobody protested. When a woman was killed in the far north of Cameroon with a newborn baby, and we expected Cameroonians to protest, they did not protest. Equally, Mata was killed in Moyoka, a newborn baby. We expected a protest, there was no protest. Children were massacred in Gabo recently. We expected a protest, there was no protest. And what a French president sits in France to speak against a president in Cameroon, or per se, say he's going to put pressure on the president of Cameroon, it becomes a very important issue that the whole group of young men will gather somewhere and then carry plaques and begin to protest against it. I think that, like I said earlier, Cameroon is a nation with wonders of the age. These are not the things we are supposed to carry ourselves and put in front, because more serious and grievous things have occurred in this country that we expected people to protest. They did not protest. Other things have equally occurred. People attempted protesting and were brutalized and kicked out of the street. And I don't understand what is protest in the actual sense, because in the Cameroonian context, we don't know what is protest.
Indeed. Thank you so much, sir. And I would just like us to revisit these. What do you think about this protest? Some people are saying that the youths were manipulated, others are saying that they weren't. And we have these youths, we have a couple of them saying that they were not paid. But then we've seen from videos circulating on social media, we've seen them eating, we've seen them writing their names on papers. But then coming to protests in Cameroon as a whole, many are shocked that people can actually protest in the country without being disrupted by the forces of law and order. Sir, just tell us what you think about these youths who came out in their numbers, whether manipulated or not, to you, analyzing it.
It's important for us to understand the context of the protest before we're able to understand if the government had to rise against it or not. These youth were protesting for the security and the well-being of the head of state, and you don't expect the military to stand against their president, to defend or to stand against their president by kicking the youth out of the street. Secondly, I want to put it before the entire audience of the nations of the world that the time frame with which those children prepared the plaques and the banners they carry was too short. I don't expect children of that magnitude, first and foremost of that age, to have been able to raise income to carry out those preparation, those plaques and the banners in a very short period of time. And for them to have been protesting, it cannot be manipulated, because we are seeing not toddlers on screen. We are seeing some of them are graduates. If you go to that crowd, even if they could be illiterate, but they are mature people in terms of age and size and height. And if you told me that, you are telling me that they were manipulated, it's amazing. In Cameroon, everything is possible. I said one time on this platform that after saying from the scriptures that with God all things are possible, in Cameroon all things are equally possible. Cameroon is a country that can cause day to shine in the night and to cause nights to the nights to be during the day. Cameroon is a thing that can make the land to go to the sea and make the sea to come to the land. So if you tell that children are manipulated, it's very amazing. In this country, politics is a game of interest. Everybody is working there for their own interests. Those children, we don't know what we are giving to them, but I think they are working for their particular interest, because they wouldn't have been able and bold enough to carry out such protests against the French president if they were not engineered from somewhere.
Thank you. And now let's take a look at the reaction of the Cameroonian government. The government is actually instead, as many people are thinking, they haven't yet summoned the French ambassador. And we have a couple of Cameroonians and even people who are following the issue in Cameroon closely, saying that probably the first thing that would have been done by President Paul Biya, as we even saw on newspapers on Monday, was to summon the French ambassador and ask him why his president would talk about about Cameroon or him in this manner, in a video that has gone worldwide and the world is watching, and I've actually even called it a slap on the face to President Biya.
Amazingly speaking, Rita, we are talking about a master and a servant in this text. It's very delicate for a master to be summoned by a servant. The issue is this: we have never had right before the French people. We've never had authority before the French people. Such incidents only take place for us to show, or for the world to see, our vulnerability before those authorities and the imperialism of the French people in Africa. Because such a thing will never happen anywhere in France, and you expect a Cameroonian to go, or a Cameroonian president to do such a thing, and the French people don't react. They will react immediately. It's to tell you how tight the authorities of this nation, their hands are, because they are limited in carrying all these things. They say sometimes a dog can only bark, but it cannot bite. What we are doing right now, on all the communiques being sent out, and all the bluffing, and all the shouting, and all the protests they are carrying, it has not touched the French in any way. I'm telling you, because if it was some other people, they would have been chased out of this country. See, for example, the poll rose in this country to speak against the government. A member of the parliament who has immunity like Weber, he was chased out of the country. Now, this is a French ambassador living in Cameroon in quietness and serenity when their own president has humiliated our own president. I think the first person that was supposed to be arrested or brought to book is a French diplomat who is a French ambassador to Cameroon. The fact that Cameroonian government has not yet summoned the French ambassador or convoked the French ambassador is a clear indication that a master cannot be convoked by the servant.
Indeed. Now, before we continue, I would just like to remind you, fellow viewers, that this program is a very interactive and informative one, and you can join us using any of the numbers on the screen to tell us what you think about the topic we have today. We are discussing the anti-Macron protest in Cameroon. We're looking at foreign interference and diplomacy in Cameroon. While some are condemning what President Macron said about President Biya, we have others who actually said they shouldn't be surprised about this, because Cameroonians, not only Cameroon, I beg your pardon, not only Cameroon, but then many French African countries have not actually been granted the independence that we think they have been granted. These are words that are coming out from activists and people who are following up the issue in Cameroon and French-speaking African countries as a whole. Now let's get to Mr. Ako John, who is equally a political analyst, and he's going to be answering a couple of questions for us this afternoon. Mr. Ako John, good afternoon to you, and thanks for joining us on air. Now, the first question is, what do you think about the anti-Macron protest that has been taking place in Cameroon? It started on Monday, and today, Tuesday, it went right up to the north of Cameroon. Now, what do you think about this protest, sir?
We Africans, and several times we realized that the education that was given to Cameroon has been manipulated, and it was incomplete education by the French colonial authorities. Today we realize that the French president, who still considers many African countries as an annexed region of the French Republic, made declaration over the weekend at the agricultural show somewhere in France, and he has become a point of contention within African. It has become a point of contention in Cameroon. Yesterday we saw a group of youths march before the French embassy in Yaoundé, and today it is happening in the far north region of Cameroon. In the same yesterday in the town of Douala, a lot of people were involved in public manifestation. We ask the question if Cameroonians are seceding, or they want to secede from the French rule, or they want to feel like Cameroon is today politically independent than it has been in the past. It is always embarrassing when questions of this nature can never be answered by Cameroonians, knowing fully well that the President of the Republic, President Paul Biya, has been placed in the position where he is by the same French authorities. You remember very well the maneuver that happened between the Ayijo and the Paul Biya regime before Paul Biya became president. And for over 40 years today, elections are all maneuvered. The 1992 elections were twisted and thwarted by the same French Republic to let President Paul Biya stay in power for over this period. We can again still analyze to tell you that Cameroonians could be taken to the streets to march in favor of the head of state, President Paul Biya, but then none of the same Cameroonians were taken to the streets to march in the favor of the killings in Dabu. Many have been unable to denounce the electoral fraud in Cameroon. when it is said in Cameroon that public manifestation should be under an administrative order, but there was no such authorization given to the same manifestors who carried out their ugly heads in support of a failing regime. I thought the same Cameroonian youths would have equally come out to march out for unemployment in Cameroon rather than marching for a failing regime, a regime that is already preparing to walk out. It is considered by the French Republic themselves as a worn-out regime within Africa. The Biafra regime is moving towards the end on its time. Many times the same government has pleaded for aid and financial support from the French Republic. I have never seen a problem with that. Why is Cameroon always not ready to receive the truth when the truth is told? President Emmanuel Macron is not submitted to Cameroon. Cameroon is submitted to the French Republic, and the French Republic and the last francophonie atmosphere and organization still remains the one that ponders and further activities in Cameroon. It is quite embarrassing that today Cameroonians, what they call themselves as the CPDM grants and the CPDM party, keep on feeling that Cameroon is independent. We know very well that Cameroon is not independent and that everything going in Cameroon has a French undertaking within its capacities. And within the cupboards, the files of President Paul Biya has been disturbing the French administration, like cited out by President Emmanuel Macron. You can equally realize that the arrest of Professor Moïse Kamto some time ago, we talk of the barrister Lydia Eyum, when François Hollande came to Yaoundé and Lydia Eyum and others were released under the same French forces. Why do we think that today Cameroon can be an independent country? There is no independent French colony in Africa, including Cameroon, and that President Paul Biya is the president of Cameroon to first of all answer to his leader in France. The leader in France is President Emmanuel Macron. President Paul Biya has no objection to this. There were just sincere statements that he has failed to solve the anglophone crisis, and that within this week we expect a call from Paris Élysée to talk directly to President Paul Biya that a far long-lasting solution should be found in the crisis. Cameroon is not subjected to the French, but I'm telling you now there is no absolute sovereignty in international law, and that when it comes to international issues that affect international interests, all international actors are called upon to act in similar manner.
John, thank you so much. Now, before you go away, I'm just going to ask you this last question, which is, of course, about foreign interference. And from everything that the president of France has said, many have raised the question again about the independence, full independence of African nations, and of course linking it to the fact that probably former colonial masters wouldn't really react or go against a president if how can I put it, their stakes isn't really affected, like probably the crisis in the country is actually affecting investment, trade or deals between the French and the Cameroonian government. Now, sir, do you think President Emmanuel Macron could be reacting because the Anglophone crisis is actually affecting France as well?
The French government has retaliated because there has been a failure in the French image presently in Africa. You can realize that there have been a serious movement in what we call the northern part of the continent, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and many have been marching against French interests in Africa, and that the French people care much about the French economy rather than the economies in Africa. France is capable of bringing lasting solutions to Anglophone regions of Cameroon. Remember, several times it has been insisted, if the option for decentralization still remains a policy in Cameroon, it's because the French government is right behind the government of Cameroon and saying that nothing more than decentralization, and that federation has no place because federation is looked upon as an English concept and it's not of the French concept. Why are Cameroonians not capable of telling the others that we are accepting decentralization because it is a French policy and that it is a French colonial policy that was given to Africans, and so Africans cannot move away from it? Why are we not thinking that Cameroonians can ask for federation independently? If President Paul Biya thinks better, then I would like him to equally challenge us by putting federalism as an option of governance in Cameroon. If this independence, we all cry, is independent for Cameroonians. African countries under the French regime has never been independent. It is not said by me. It is not said by Cameroonians. Remember, several Italians and other foreign partners, Russian included, have asked France to give the economic independence and political independence that the French former colony needs to exercise political authority throughout the world. All African countries that were considered ex-French colonies still remain paying taxes and keeping what we call national reserve in France. France remains the mother continent, the mother country for all African countries, and has never considered them as mature enough to govern themselves. You can imagine the crisis in Cote d'Ivoire. You can imagine what happened in the Sudan, the Libya, and France is capable of putting order in its interest wherever he thinks its interest is at stake. Cameroon is not independent. President Pobia came to power after French manipulation. And why is it today causing havoc when France gives instructions to him and he executes them? And when it is public now that those instructions were coming from France, how is it a problem? President Pobia has never been an independently elected leader in Cameroon since 1992. He was placed in that same seat by the French authorities. That I am telling you, and that has been throughout the time. Even his replacement with Ayijo was a French manipulation. To what extent is Cameroon independent? Cameroonian authorities and the political elite should be capable of accepting the truth and work by it rather than becoming propaganda agents of the failing regime.
Thank you so much. That was Mr. Akojon. He is a political analyst. Thanks for your contribution. And if you're just joining us, fellow viewers, it's Views on the Continent on African Media. And today we are discussing the anti-Macron protests in Cameroon. Youths have come out in Yaoundé, in Douala, and in the northern region of Cameroon. We're looking at what these protests mean and if these youths were manipulated or not. And of course, we are going to get back to our panelists here with us in the studio. Mr. Ambazonian, let me come back to you. People are actually saying, I'm sure you listened to Mr. Akojon, some others are talking about the fact that French or France were looking at their president Macron will not make such an utterance if France's interest in Cameroon is not at stake, or if the crisis, we're not looking only at the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, but then the north, we have Boko Haram and other issues. If all of these are not affecting them as well, do you agree?
Of course, France has always put people in power who definitely work for their interests. And it would appear every time an African French president becomes stubborn to the rules of engagement, considering the fact that France is almost losing its interest in Cameroon, they would definitely do anything to sabotage the president on seat in order to make sure they manipulate things and bring in another president. There are a few things that I think that President Pobia is no longer yielding to the French demands again in Cameroon. You know, in those days we used to have everything in the military controlled by the French, but this time around Pobia had to shift to bring in the bee, which was trained by the Israelites. And I think those are schemes and devices he's trying to put before people to make us understand that it's no longer heeding to the French rules of engagement. And since France has realized that they are no longer giving total attention to their interests in Africa or Cameroon, they are beginning to make things now become very uncomfortable and very, very unpleasant for the president of Cameroon. Cameroonians should be able to understand that life is very complicated when it comes to France in Africa. Something occurred recently in Togo. Faure Gnassingbé has just gone in for 4th term in office, which is an abuse of the democracy of that country. But all those things are thanks to the French manipulation. It goes down to Cote d'Ivoire and the rest. I've always said on this platform that every African president that refuses to heal or comply to the terms of agreement between that country and France, the country's president is at stake. The president's position is at stake. I give you examples of Laurent Gbagbo, who was in Cote d'Ivoire, refused to allow French to take control over the cocoa in Cote d'Ivoire, and they plotted a coup and sabotaged him and kicked him out of power. Look at what is happening. Guillaume Soro has risen to stand against Alassane Dramane Ouattara, which is their stooge, and now they are raising charges against Guillaume Soro. Is inciting violence against the nation. The same case in Central African Republic, François Boazizi refused to submit to the whims and caprices of the French government. They plotted a coup, kicked him out, and they bring Catherine Manza-Panza, and then later on they brought in Faustin Touadéra. Now you go down to Burkina Faso. Since the time Blaise Compaoré, which was the Astouche, was kicked out, Burkina Faso has never been in peace till date. So France's interest in Africa has always been to collect. And if an African country president begin to, because President probably came to power when Ahidjo had signed a lot of treaties, and so he was operating on those treaties, and most of those treaties are gradually expiring and dying out. So I think that he doesn't want to re-sign, let me use this word, those treaties anymore, and they are doing everything possible now to sabotage and then to discredit him. So I think that France's interest is at stake, like you asked, is at stake in Cameroon, considering the crisis going on right now. What they are trying to do, I think they are trying to manipulate things so whether they can bring another president that will yield to their demands, and even worse than what we have been suffering. I don't want to mention names on this platform. Bring a president that will submit to them, and then so they can be able to like coin a kind of independence for the southern Cameroons, or some kind of federal system that will still give their grip over the continent or the nation of Cameroon. So I think that all that gymnastics that Macron put on screen there, France is the last nation that everybody should deal with. You have to deal with them with a pinch of salt. There is no interest that will ever come from France that will not jeopardize the well-being of that country. So I think if it is France that is going to solve the crisis in Cameroon, I don't think we are going to be delivered, because I don't need France as a mediator. I don't need him as a solution. I don't need France even as a help to this crisis. I have to be very sincere. Once bitten, twice shy.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambe Valentine. We're going to come back to you, but then we have a couple of callers on the line. We're going to begin with you, Mr. Pascal, joining us from the USA. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon over there. Yeah, my program, the program you both have there is a very good program, and I just want to contribute on this thing on France. One of the biggest challenge is when any person step up and talk about the government in Cameroon. If you see if Macron says something that is contradicting in making the government in place to feel that they are doing the right thing, they could have stand there. The whole media will pick it and make noise over it. But this gentleman, what is on the ground in Cameroon is really it's a big genocide. All of us are feeling the pinch. I'm an anglophone. I'm from the southwest. So I feel the pinch of this thing. The young man feels the pinch of what is going down there, what is going on in Cameroon. And he addressed the situation to a president who controls Cameroon. They cannot sit there and think that France cannot say any word when it concerns Cameroon. France is the authority over Cameroon. If you believe me, the poor has been controlled by the French people for how many years today, the millions of francs that people pay in the port. So the Cameroon government should be very, very careful for what they are doing. Even the organization of the youth that have been manipulated yesterday, that are in front of the American embassy, I pity them. If you call yourself a youth and you are talking, yesterday look at the banners, even in that particular place. If they say Cameroon is a bilingual country, all those banners was written in French. And then in the table there were money sharing going on right in the place. So I blame this youth. People are dying in your own country. You can't step up and say no to this genocide that is going on. And then something just happened. Oh, people are defending the interest of a president. The president has chased every person from southern Cameroon. There is no person living in entire whole villages. He has taken Boya, the Fako, and Bamenda town to stay with. Is that a country that people have to sit there and say, no, everything is going on smoothly? And then for the so-called elite in the southwest and northwest, the Ngabu situation that happened, can you imagine people that claim that they won election in Dongamanto? None of them stand and say no to what happened in Ngabu. This is a shame of the highest order in an Anglophone zone. I just pray that someday some of these people will realize themselves that what they did will be haunting them, because their children are going to reap what they have done to our own community. So what is going on in Cameroon is a very bad situation. And the people in Cameroon should know that Cameroon has 3 presidents the way I see it. If you look at, there is a president in Ambazonia is in jail. Maurice Kamto is there claiming that he's a president, that he won the election. So you see, Cameroon have divided into 3 parts. So people are people are fighting for themselves. So the regime in place has just taken a few persons and manipulate a whole country and sit on it. And whatever they do, they just use their little money, pay some group of people to go and stand there and hold placards that the people that have designed it for themselves and begin to create problems in the whole Cameroon. That is wrong. That is wrong. President Pobia, step up and stop.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carl. Let's get Mr. Sebastien, who is joining us from Douala in Cameroon. Good afternoon to you, and thanks for joining us on the program.
For us Cameroonian youth to see how we are selling our futures for sugar balls or what I call 50 change that they were sharing during the protest. It's a shame because I don't think it's right for any right-thinking Cameroonian, especially a youth, to go out and protest concerning something that President Macron said he's going to call Mr. Biya for them to talk about the anglophone issue. So it's a clear cut to show that the 2 countries are too separate. Because I don't understand. People will die in Gabu, in the Nogamasu region, in the northwest region. People will not go out to protest. Things are happening in the country. Nobody goes out for protest. And the president of France will utter a statement. Youth go out to protest. I just wait for their future. Because I still don't get this. Because if we look at this issue, when the protests in Cameroon start being free and fair, since when do we start having fair protests where you go out and protest and come back without no scratch, nothing happen, nothing strange? We are used to going out to protest. We see bullets flying left and right. We see water cannons. We see the military with their trucks doing this, beating civilians and do so on. So it clearly shows that the regime has an hand in it. If the regime does not have an hand in it, then I don't see anything, because any right-thinking youth will not do that. And I read a post online saying that University of Yaoundé students were met and they were paying money at their hostels for them to go and protest. So it's a shame to the country. It's a shame. I'm ashamed at this moment to be a Cameroonian. It's so shame. It's disgusting.
Okay, thank you so much, Sebastien, joining us from Douala. Let's get back to our panelist in the studio, Mr. Ambe Valentine. Now, we have so many people saying, as I just said, we're talking about how the government should be reacting after such a statement or an utterance from a nation that many Cameroonians always think that they walk like hand in gloves. The government has already released a couple of communiques. They're actually talking about the sovereignty of the nation, condemning the fact that President Macron said that their army isn't professional and it's killing people in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. But then to you, Mr. Ambe, what should the Cameroonian government be doing at this point in time? What's the first step that they should be making to ensure that things return to normal in their country, and of course the relationship that they share with foreign nations isn't really disrupted or destroyed?
Regina, I have a worry with this foreign nations stuff in Cameroon and Africa in general. We are political analysts, and we've taken a critical survey that when things happen in Africa, the so-called, in quotes, foreign organizations never take interest in the well-being of Africans. I said on another media platform that Africans should consider themselves as orphans. They have no father nor mother in the diplomatic corps, because most of the things that happen in Africa, we don't have any intervention. I'll give you instances. There was a little problem in Catalonia that intended to separate from Spain. Within the space of days, the UN intervention force was already there to secure every further casualties. It has not been like that in Rwanda. 1 million people died in Rwanda, and UN never intervened until a young man called Paul Kagame came up and curbed the crisis. When Yahya Jammeh took power in Gambia and became a tyrant and stood a dictator to stay in power, even when he was defeated by Damabaru, they told him to go out, he refused. It was the ECOWAS soldiers under the influence of Muhammadu Buhari that kicked Kagame out of power. Yahya Jammeh, out of power. Cameroon is going through crisis. All we hear UN says, we condemn the killing in North, we condemn the killing in Gabu, we condemn the killing of Bimata. Condemning, and not taking any action. Commonwealth, condemn. Francophonie, condemn. United Nations, condemn. And then AU, we used to call them toothless bulldog that can only bark, they cannot bite. They don't even bark anymore. That is one bad thing about the AU. They don't even bark. So calling them toothless bulldog that cannot bark, we are even accrediting them. They don't even bark at all. So I wonder the role of the AU in Africa. Now, look, coming back to the statement you have asked, what should Cameroon do? I think that when a president of a diplomatic relationship with another country breaches the terms of agreement, the number one representative of that country is the ambassador. The French ambassador was supposed to have been summoned or convoked, because through the ambassador they are reaching the president. They were supposed to have done that, but no Cameroonian authority has done that. All they are doing is communicate. Those communique have no effect on ground. They are not changing any situation. They are not confronting the French. They are not even taking any measures. If it were to be a Cameroonian that committed a crime, military will chase you even every hole you enter, and they will trace you to trap you and deal with you. But this time around they are telling communicate. It makes no sense. Secondly, look at what is going on in Cameroon right now. If at all you say you are sick of a particular ailment and you take a drug for that ailment, you don't get well, it's only an indication that you have taken the wrong drug. We have had a national dialogue in this country with respect to the anglophone crisis, and the thing only worsened. It's a clear indication that we drank the drug of an ailment that we did not have. So it is very important for us to go back and conduct a new diagnosis to find out what we are actually sick of, and then administer the right drug. So to me, the government has to go back, retrace what are the major causes of the crisis. Did the national dialogue bring any solution, or in what way did the national dialogue solve this problem? If it has not been solved after the national dialogue, is only a clear indication that we have administered the wrong injection for the wrong sickness. Let us get back, diagnose the crisis, and treat it the way it is. I am saying it, I'm still repeating it. No international body, I repeat, UN, AU, Francophonie, Commonwealth, will help us solve this problem, inclusive France, who just made that statement. France will never make a statement if their interest is not behind it 50%. And to the southern Cameroonians, I want to say something to you. Do not be blindfolded by Macron's statement. Macron is not with you, has never been with you, and will never and ever be with you. Do not be hypnotized by that public statement and be carried that France has people at heart. France has its interest at heart. Behind that statement is France. It is not you. To clarify you, Cameroon has been in crisis now, getting to the 4th year. For Macron to have been speaking now is a clear indication. Number two, if Macron says he was the one that mounted President Biya pressure to release Maurice Kamto and his interest of anglophone crisis, he was equally supposed to have mounted pressure for Seseko and the Naira 10 to be released. For him to have released only Maurice Kamto is to tell you southern Cameroonians and anglophones in Cameroon that Macron doesn't have you people at heart. Do not be dribbled, double-crossed, manipulated, and hypnotized by that singular statement of Macron. I rest my case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambe John. Of course, we're going to come back to you, Mr. Ambe Valentine. I'm really sorry, Mr. Ambe Valentine. We're going to come back to you, but then before that, I would just like us to go to our callers. The call center just informed me that we have another caller from Douala. I don't know if he's still there.
going on in the Ambazonian region has really affected the interests of France. That is why the president of France is speaking up at this point. The statement in which the president of France made really got my attention because he said two things. He said France does not support dictatorship in Africa, so France only supports projects in Africa. And what is very painful is that the projects in which France supports in Africa, they don't care if the projects are being executed over the blood of Africans. That is why my heart cries for Africans. And you can see that the protests in which took place in some parts of Cameroon, particularly in Yaoundé and Douala, were delegated by the regime because we all know the way the regime works. We cannot go out and protest without being met with violence, because protesting in Cameroon is suicidal. So when you see people going out to protest, you know that they are on the regime payroll. And I've seen videos online in which people are collecting pay. How can you be paid to protest? What treats your conscience when you go out to protest when you're being paid? What sort of patriotism is that? It's very bad, very bad. You can see that the elderly are using the youth. They are using the youth. There are many things going on in the country in which you have to protest for. But if you go out to protest for the right reasons, they are being killed. They are being slaughtered. It's very painful and it's a shame. I think France, in this particular crisis, has its interest. And in international politics, people only talk when their interests are threatened. You can see that their banana business in which they have in Cameroon is threatening their timber business and the insecurity problem. So that's why they are speaking. That's why they are speaking. That's the only reason why they are talking. I think that every Cameroonian has to rethink and we structure the relationship in which we have with France because it favors only one party. The relationship is not bilateral. They only talk when they have something to lose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for your contribution. Now let's get to this other caller, Mr. D. Derek.
To all viewers of Afrique Media, my name is Ndi Derek. I'm calling from Korogo in Côte d'Ivoire. I would like to say two things in regards to the anti-Macron protests that we have all seen in the streets of Yaoundé, Douala and parts of the northern part of our country. I would like to say that our youth probably are in lack of historical knowledge. We know the history, that in history, that Cameroon was once a province of France. France, in their foreign policies, practiced what we call la France d'outre-mer, and all the overseas territories of France were provinces of France. And basically, Cameroon was a province of France. And after independence, even before independence, there were so many bilateral relations that were signed, and still up to today, France controls a lot in our country in terms of development, in terms of politics. So many things are happening, and so whatever happens in Cameroon actually affects France, because France still looks at Cameroon as part of its territory, which we regret so much. But then what the youths are doing only shows their lack of knowledge on this historical aspect. So the coming out of Macron being the president of France is just something normal, and he's just crying out loud like someone who is enjoying from the wealth of Cameroon, to say that this thing in the northwest and southwest has to stop because it is affecting them also. Secondly, I want to talk about the bad faith of our government. We have seen in a very long time there have never been manifestation without water being poured on people. The other time even teachers came out to manifest just to say goodbye to their friend, to their colleague who was killed by a student, and see what happened to them. Some ended up in jail. It is really, really unfortunate that this type of thing is happening, and it only ends up.
Mr. D. Derek, thank you so much. Let's get equally to Mr. Ngwe Marcel. He's joining us from Douala in Cameroon. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon, lovers of African media. This is Ngwe myself from Douala, Cameroon. When I saw the video of Emmanuel Macron and that particular activist, normally my conclusion, I really said that I did not really appreciate the way Macron reacted into it. Normally, you can't go on air and be telling people that it's because of your influence. You are the one who pressurized Biya for the release of Maurice Kamto. You can't be saying, a diplomat cannot be saying such things on a crowd like that. I knew that maybe he didn't use wisdom. He didn't use wisdom, because when you say like that, it means you are trying to put down the morals of the other people's president. He wasn't supposed to say like that. Even though nobody is appreciating what is happening in Cameroon and whatsoever, he was not supposed to say that on a camera or whatsoever in that particular manner. I never expected such thing from him. We know at times there are some particular things that happened, and the devil want to expose such people. I know that the Magu massacre that occurred, people did not come out, people did not condemn it. Instead, the government of Cameroon, they wanted to play games. They were struggling to play games, and it is that particular game that has landed them to this way, to where we are today. Now they are trying to use the youths to be marching. For how long will they continue to be using the youths? And after that, they are going to be. After that, they will start paying them, because the images are there. We see how people
Thank you so much, Ngwe Marcel. And this last caller, Bless, before we get back to the studio and conclude the program. Hello, Bless, and thanks for joining us on Views on the Continent.
Good evening, televiewers of Free Media. It's quite a very brilliant topic today, Gina. Gina, actually, when we hear a topic like this, we are very interested in giving our comments regarding this. This topic is coming just at the right time when Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, just made a statement criticizing the present regime in Yaoundé. Actually, Gina, when we look at things like this, we now understand how the government doesn't have the people at heart. And now it clearly shows you how we are living in Cameroon. It is telling you that there are some other people who are on the other side who are trying, instead on their own part, we who are actually the anglophones who are actually coming to the street to protest, that they have some grievances which are supposed to be taken care of, means they have a point. But on the other hand, if you see the reactions of some of these our youths who are in Yaoundé, from what they are portraying, it is now telling you that they are the ones who are terrorists, because they are trying to destabilize the country. If you imagine, it's just so funny, Gina, when I look at the scenarios which just took place. I remember from 2016 when the crisis started, people came outside with peace plan. They made their grievances clear to the government. They brought down some points, went to Bambili, teachers, lawyers, and all of them brought their points. And the points were all rejected. And we came back to the table to negotiate, and still, it was still an imposition. They imposed on them that they have to take this or else nothing will be discussed here. And in that case, in Bamenda and Boya, when the population came outside, they were splashed with tear gas. And military came outside and had the laws well beaten and teachers. But the same thing we see today. Look at what happened in Yaoundé and the north. The police is there guiding the population. Gina, it is a very high level of hypocrisy. When we see things like this, it really baffles us. But we know, we keep on trusting in God. We know the best is yet to come. We keep on trusting in God as human beings, for people who believe in the best of the people, because the voice of the people is the voice of God. We cannot go. We only do what we can do as humans.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bless. Now let's get back to the studio and conclude. Mr. Ambe Valentine, from everything that is happening in Cameroon, we have people who share this thought that probably France has a hidden agenda in Cameroon, as they have in other African nations. Now the question is, would it yield any fruits, as in Cameroon being peaceful after all in the end?
France, like I said earlier, has always worked for its interests in Africa. And from the statement of Emmanuel Macron, it's very dangerous. That statement is very dangerous because a lot of things are beneath that statement for anybody who can analytically observe and, ascertain the statement he made publicly. What I'm trying to say is, if Macron says they were the ones who pressured President Paul Biya to release Maurice Kamto, I don't think Maurice Kamto is the only political prisoner in Cameroon. If I thought we were working for justice, but I think they are trying to free someone they can use, like I said earlier, and they are working for their personal interest, and it's very risky for Cameroonians. This is not a time for us to be carried by the statement of Emmanuel Macron, because for ages past till tomorrow, Macron or France will always work 90% for its interest and 10% for the persons in question. So that statement has a lot of things in it and is well loaded, and we fear the days ahead. Yeah, we fear the days ahead, because from my little analysis and how I've studied the French people, they are very technical in their approach. The atrocities they have committed in Africa, we don't even want to get into those details in other nations. It's something that always begins like that. They will throw a statement in the air, it will begin to create tension, gradually it's come before you realize they intervene. They will intervene in a case that will defend their interests. They were the ones that sent forces to kick Gbagbo out. But Alassane Dramane Ouattara is there committing all kinds of nonsense acts. You will never see intervention of French forces. They were not send forces to kick Bouazizi out. Touadéra is there loyal to them. You will never see them send anything to kick them out. So the story continues. I want Cameroonians to be very, very careful and be technical. To me, this is my opinion. If at all France has to penetrate this country with another president, Cameroonians should put linguistics aside, to put regional differences aside, and join to kick France first out of this country, and then we settle our scores amongst us.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to be here with us in the studio. It's always a pleasure. Now, fellow viewers, thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for your calls. Thanks for participating in the program. Now, for the rest of you who still want to continue the participation, you could join the others on the conversation on our Facebook page, Afrique Media, under the live video which was shared. Now, from wherever you're watching us, it's goodbye for now.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of Afrique Media. Thank you, Afrique Media. Thank you for what you are doing.